Today, all of us are going to be participating in an interview with Blake Rockwell. He's the compassionate founder of Special Spectators. It's really a remarkable nonprofit that started as a self-expression and leadership program project, one of Landmark's programs, and it's now impacted the lives of over 10,000 children and families. And what Special Spectators does is it gives those children and families an opportunity to be VIPs at college sporting events. If we have people that are not from the United States or don't necessarily live in states where college sports are big, they are big. And these events are really, really extraordinary experiences for children. Special Spectators collaborates with children's hospitals and universities to really create magical game day experiences. And these events are not just about watching the game, but all the behind the scenes experience that children have with the coaches and the players, and tailgating, which is really a major thing at college sporting events. But in total, it creates an experience that children never get over. And I'm very excited for Blake to be able to tell us about this. And one other thing you do want to know is that through Blake's efforts, he was nominated a CNN hero, which puts him among the likes of some of the most extraordinary people making a difference in the United States and around the world. But I will let Blake take over and tell us more about his story and experience.
Thank you, Seamus. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever your time zone is. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday, and appreciate the introduction, Seamus. I laugh when Seamus says that I got this started in my SELP program, because Special Spectators completely bombed as my SELP project. A lot of that had to do with timing, but it was not successful at all. But I kept the idea alive, and after my SELP, my daughter, who is now 21 years old, was born 10 weeks prematurely, and so she eventually came home, and I became a stay-at-home dad. I'd actually lost my job about a month before she was born, and just thought, hey, I've got this idea, and I've got a little bit of time now that I'm home to work on this when she's taking naps and all of that. And so that's really kind of the start of Special Spectators and what we do, and just creating these transformative VIP all access game day experiences for seriously ill children and their families. And as Seamus said, it's not just going to a game, but it's really being a part of the game, really being a part of the team, and having that special access where they get into the locker room and they meet coaches and players. And as Seamus says, we have a tailgate party for them as well, a G-rated tailgate party, as some of you might know. Some tailgates can get pretty wild and pretty crazy, but this is obviously a program that's focused on kids, and so we want to make it very kid centric and kid friendly and family friendly. And so we do that. And as you can see from some of the pictures, they get down on the field, they get introduced to the crowd during a timeout, or maybe they're named as honorary captains for the game that they're attending. But whatever the case is, there's an opportunity for the crowd, which in some cases is a little over 100,000 fans, to acknowledge these kids and to welcome them to the stadium. And it is still, after 21 years and 22 college football seasons, still my favorite moment of game day. It still gives me goosebumps, and it's an incredibly powerful moment as well. And when we walk the kids back to their seats after they've been down on the field, just to not only have heard that reception that the fans give them, but to also see the impact, in the first few rows where we can hear fans yelling words of encouragement to the kids, or they're reaching over the wall to give them a high five, or to see, their tears in the eyes. That you're not only making an impact on these kids and their families, but also on the fans who are in attendance. So, we obviously could not do it alone without, hundreds and hundreds of people. We Special Spectators, we have about 200 volunteers across the country who are incredibly passionate and dedicated to our mission. We also work with dozens of university athletic departments and children's hospitals, as well as obviously our donors and our corporate partners also who really make this possible. And our roster of corporate partners includes companies like UPS and General Mills and IHOP and oh my goodness, I'm going to be missing. I'm going to be leaving out so many, but obviously through their support and their passionate dedication to what we do, and that they really enhance our game day experience and everything about what Special Spectators does. So, and Seamus also mentioned the CNN hero thing, and I kind of I'm not really comfortable with that. I don't know if that's my thing that I need to get over, but I'm just not um, not really that comfortable with that moniker because when you're doing the work that we're doing, I mean, look at these kids. These kids are the heroes. Their parents are the heroes, and it's always about them, and it's always about parading the most incredible, one of the greatest days in their lives. And to me, they are the heroes. And for me to be labeled that, it's just, I don't know, it seems a little ridiculous to me. But I'll open with that, Seamus.
All right, great. Well, one of the things that I was very interested to hear is about the process of selecting the children. And there's a lot, you just outlined a lot of things that get
Yep.
coordinated between the children's hospitals and the teams, and they all have their objectives. And then of course you have the families dealing with what they're dealing with. How do
Yep.
they participate in this?
So we are not what might be regarded as like a wish granting organization. Some of the better organizations that are out there, better known, are kind of considered wish granting organizations. We are not like that. But having said that, we do have families who reach out to us directly and say, hey, I love this program. How can I get my child involved? But what we do is, as far as selecting the kids, which is probably 95 to 98% of our attendees, is we work very closely with the Children's Hospital, located in that community or located as close to the university as possible. And we just work very closely with like the child life department, which is, anyone, doctors, nurses, therapists, all these folks are, cut from a different cloth, and child life specialists are right there because they are almost like another family member, but representing the hospital and just making sure that the child's needs are met in so many different ways. And they know these families really well. So we're not a diagnosis specific program. We're serving kids with all types of different illnesses and diseases and conditions. And so hospitals love that because it's open to anyone. Obviously our game day experiences are very long, can be 7-8 hours. So children have to be strong enough to be able to deal with just 8 hours of total of excitement. And we really want families who are going through a lot at that particular time, and they don't have an opportunity to go out as a family away from the hospital and just experience pure joy. And so we really want families who are at that stage and whatever they're dealing with. Maybe the kiddos who are the patients have been dealing with whatever they're dealing with for years, and their tanks are starting to run low, and they need to be re-energized by going to a game day so that they can continue their fight with all the gusto that they can. So we're looking for families like that. And then obviously we also want families who are really going to appreciate going to a game. And I kid by saying, we don't want a child in Alabama to our event at Alabama to show up like in Auburn colors, who is Auburn's their big rival. And, to have a child show up in their colors would be a little uncomfortable. And I get a very intimidating glare from the head coach, wondering, why this kiddo's showing up in apparel and garb that's representing their big rival. But kids who are really going to appreciate going to a game as well. And so, and we surprise the families once they're selected, and we've discussed it with the children's hospitals. We then extend a surprise invitation to those families to come spend game day with us. And then, we lay out the schedule for the day and the itinerary so that the families really don't have to do that much other than getting the kids dressed, getting them in the car, and you know, we tell them where to go, and once they arrive, we really take it from there.
I want to come back to another couple questions I have about the families. But in speaking to you, I realized that Special Spectators didn't necessarily start with the SELP. It goes back to a personal experience that you had
Yeah,
with your brother.
yeah. So I'm the youngest of five, and one of my brothers was born with a congenital heart defect. And I grew up in Michigan, and my family spent most of the years in Grand Rapids on the west side of the state. And my brother was treated most of his life at 3 hours away in Chicago at what was then Children's Memorial Hospital. It's now Lurie Children's Hospital. And um, my brother eventually passed away during his second open heart surgery at the age of 10 and a half. And he passed away at the Mayo Clinic. And essentially back then which was kind of a common, or not common, but cutting edge, was to replace the defective part with the pig equivalent. And my brother did not survive the surgery. He passed away right on the operating table. So after college, I moved to Chicago, and I became a volunteer at the same children's hospital where my brother was treated. And I met all these just absolutely incredible kids and amazing families, amazing parents. And I'm a huge sports fan. I played sports my entire life. I played sports through college. And what stood out for me was how much the kids loved sports. But what was incredibly surprising was that very few of them had ever been to a game of any kind. I mean, basically, their exposure to sports was what they watched on TV, or what, from playing video games. And I thought, well, that's easy. That's easy to do, especially with college sports and college football, and you can make a full day of it. And so that's really the basis for it. And just to kind of move forward a little bit, a few years from Chicago, I moved to New York, and I actually did my landmark forum maybe a month or two. This was a long time ago, and sorry, my recall is not what it used to be, but like a month or two before 9/11. And then I had colleagues who were killed in the attacks at the World Trade Center. And I had a friend in Chicago who, a couple weeks after 9/11, died from lung cancer. And she was not a smoker at all. She died at like 32 from lung cancer. And I was just kind of like, what in the world am I doing? And I took the SELP shortly after that, and it just kind of all converged together. And that's how that was kind of the seed was planted, and it's just kind of taken off from there.
If there's anybody who may be here who hasn't participated in the self-expression leadership program, or moreover landmark programs, the self-expression leadership program is really a program that's designed so that participants can create a project that really expresses a passion or a commitment or a vision or possibility that they have. And the training of the program is really in how to implement it in such a way that it is not simply a project that accomplishes a task, but engages a community of people in the very vision or possibility that you care about. And that I'll use that as a segue back to a question about how you bring all of these different entities together. On one hand, I could see how a children's hospital would love opportunities for the children. On the
Yeah.
other hand, college athletics, particularly college football in
Yeah.
America, is effectively a business with very, very rigorous demands on it. So I would imagine that it's a big request to have players and coaches participate in this sometimes.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that business is just getting bigger and bigger. When I got this started, in 2001, I want to say the biggest athletic budget out there was probably like $130 million. And now, over 20 years later, it's probably three times that. So the business is definitely getting bigger and bigger, and that can be an obstacle. Luckily, we've had the good fortune of really getting some incredible support from college coaches who have helped us almost I don't want to say sell the program, but have, convinced other coaches that, hey, this is not something that's going to um, be a, a, another item on your plate on game day. In fact, it's going to enhance game day for not only you and your players, but it's also going to not take away from coaches can be incredibly superstitious, and anything that kind of disrupts their game day routine, they become very kind of scared. And so to have coaches say, hey, this isn't going to impact your game day situation or game day routine at all, it's really going to enhance it. Has been a blessing for us, and it's really allowed us to have additional collegiate partners join.
Well, given the way that it's grown over the years, Blake, it's clearly
Yeah.
they've bought in.
Yeah.
Can you share with us any of the moments where you know that this reached the likes of these coaches, the players, and reached them and impacted them?
Yeah, there's a lot of incredible stories. And like I said, these kids have incredible access on game day, whether it be in the locker room or the tunnel or what have you. And there's so many occasions that I can think of where uh, the tunnel, as the guys are taking the field, talk about the energy that is in that tunnel, and guys who are, we're talking guys who are 6'7", 330 pounds, and they are getting themselves psyched up. And what goes on in the tunnel, a lot of hooting, hollering, jumping around, guys banging into each other, all that kind of stuff. And when you see a guy of that size just suddenly look to his left and notice, I don't know, kids who are clearly going through a lot, maybe they're bald or what have you, and have them take a moment out where they go down to and say something to the little boy or little girl, or give them a fist bump or what have you, and just take that. I mean, it doesn't sound like much; it's just a few seconds, but it's incredibly powerful. And then the player will just go back to what he was doing previously, and he's getting himself all jacked up, and then they take the field, and in some cases the kids are right behind them taking the field, and it's just it's really cool. And for the coach to always while on the field and having just taken the field, for the coach to take a moment and just welcome the families and shake the hands of the parents, and fist bump with the kids and all of that kind of stuff. That's one of the many just powerful moments that can take place.
Mm. Just a reminder to everybody who's participating, we do have the chat open. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to go ahead and put it into the chat. I'll actually just ask one of those now. So Tom James asked, Blake mentioned during his SELP, it didn't go well, and now is a complete success. So who were you being before, and what happened, and what was the transformational possibility that had you follow through like never before?
Yeah. Great question. Fantastic question. And I think I don't know. It probably was. I'm sure it was who I was being, and I could, again. It was so many years ago. I had this vision, and I don't even really know how much maybe I shared this vision. I mean, really shared it and in detail as to what I imagined or what I pictured. A lot of it was just really timing, and to give you a little bit of background on my SELP. So I kind of had this idea, this general idea, and I did my SELP. It was like, I think we started in maybe October or so, and so you don't even really get into starting to think about the project till a few weeks. Correct me if I'm wrong, Seamus, and maybe the program has changed a little bit. Like I said, it's been more than 20 years, but it'd been several weeks before you even start thinking about a project. So by that time, it was like November, and my idea was to do it with a handful of big November, New Year's Day bowl games, like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl. These are the biggest college football bowl games that are out there. And so I really only had just a matter of weeks to really make this material. And I'm talking like 6 weeks, maybe at the most. And obviously these are huge events. 9/11 had just happened. So, that really had everyone in a frenzy, and to come to them and bring something additional on their plate, it was just, I ran out of time. I just didn't have time. And that's why, quote unquote, it didn't work during the framework of the SELP program, which lasted back then. How long did it last, Seamus? A few
three
months?
3 months.
Three months, yeah. So within the framework of the SELP, it didn't work, but I was encouraged by the feedback I was getting. And that's when I said, okay, I really got to formulate this idea and share it with the people who are kind of in power. And they all loved the idea, but they couldn't kind of, make the schools do it. So I eventually reached out to what was back then like 117 athletic departments and presented this idea to them in the first year and followed up with calls and emails and all of that. And, the very first year out of the 117, I had two. That's it, two. And just kept it alive and kept going. And it's grown and grown and grown. And now we have, several dozen. So, and I still receive more no's than yeses, which is totally fine. But, eventually, I want more yeses than no's.
Um, it will come back to some of the. I think people want to hear more about the families and the children, but
Yeah.
there's a couple of questions that I think are really great in the chat. And well, Barbara, I think Barbara's kind of making a point, which is what defines failed in a self-expression and leadership program project or any kind of initiative like this. And I'll kind of speak from my background having led that program. When you put a possibility out into the world and you take the action to have those conversations and engage people in something, it begins to live beyond you, and begins to live beyond your original vision for what that would be. And often people discover that their vision is actually constraining the full possibility. And it's not until you really have other people, I use the word buy in, that it really takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, totally.
And then we do have somebody who's interested in possibly adding to the dozen schools. So we'll get back to that in a little bit.
In New Jersey. All right. Awesome.
Uh,
Rutgers.
but Richard's asking a question that I think is great, and it brings it back to the families. There's an aspect of this, given you're dealing with sick children, and those of us that are parents can't help but be drawn in and feel compassion for what the families must be going through. What is it like for a child to experience this? What is it like for a family to have this experience?
Well, there are so many different reactions, and let me try and kind of categorize it in a few different categories. So you might have kiddos who have recently been diagnosed with something, for instance, and this was actually brought to my attention by a fellow Landmark graduate who was volunteering, Susan Akers, who's in the Chicago area. And this was after a couple of years too. I hate to say, I'm embarrassed to say, but she helped me realize something, and that was that so many of these kids, I mean, kids are so perceptive. They're so smart, incredibly smart. And they're fully aware of how their illness impacts their families. And they feel guilty about it, despite the fact that they have absolutely no control over their illness. They see things like their brother and sister not able to do some of the extracurricular stuff after school that they used to do prior to the diagnosis. They see mom and dad up late at night, you know, wrestling a mountain of insurance statements and hospital bills and all of that kind of stuff. And they're just trying to figure out how to make ends meet and deal with this massive expense that has come across their way. In a lot of cases, it puts a lot of stress on the family. And it's not unusual for parents to break up, to split up during this. And the child feels guilty about how this has all impacted their family. So being able to go to a game with your family and have something really fun take place and hear a parent say, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've seen my child smile since their diagnosis months or maybe years ago, that's pretty impactful. And then to hear the same thing about a child saying that about their parents, that's pretty incredible. And that, you know, you can see the weight of that guilt on a child when physically, you can see it when they arrive at the stadium. And then over the course of 6, 7, 8 hours, you not only begin to see their face light up, but you see them actually standing up straighter because the weight of that guilt is off of their shoulders. So having that type of impact is pretty incredible. Now, that might be, you know, for a family who's recently had a diagnosis or they've had one for a while. We've had kids on the other end who have passed away like 4 weeks after going to a game. And to hear a family say, well, that was the last great day in my child's life. And to, you know, the child is, you know, I don't want to say on their deathbed, but, you know, clearly declining at the hospital or hospice care or whatever. And around them are pictures of their family and their pets, and but also have pictures from, you know, their game day experience with Special Spectators. I mean, that kind of impact, that's the kind of impact I'm talking about. And, you know, we go into this thinking we can create a pretty cool day and that we can exceed what the family's expectations are for game day. But sometimes, you know, we just need to say, hey, you know, it's not about what we're creating. It's just, what are we present to? And that's what we tell our volunteers is, you know, really be present to the situation. Maybe dad's not around, for instance. Maybe we don't know why dad's not around. It's just dad's not around. So be present to that. And yeah, we're getting them into the locker room. They're down on the field. They're meeting coaches and players. They're being introduced to 100,000 fans and all of that. And that's all super cool. But maybe it just comes down to being present to what the issue is and having a volunteer on the sidelines grab a football and just playing catch with a little boy or little girl. And despite everything that we've gone into weeks planning, that moment right there, because you're present to what's going on, is what the child will always remember. So, like I said, there's so many different, as far as the impact, it presents itself in so many different forms and in so many different ways. And it's all, you know, it's, you just, yeah.
Well, I believe we have a video that we can play of parents' experience, an interview with them. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was a pretty sweet day to have your child, after having seen the pain and the harm and the injuries and the reactions of his body to medications and to cancer and things of that nature, to see all of that pain and then see the smiles on his face and the joy that comes out of his heart and the expression and the feelings that other people give him in treating him as a hero, in which he is. There's no explanation for it. There's no just wording that says how much I appreciate Special Spectators.
This can't be done without volunteers, clearly. And I think perhaps one of the bigger challenges, particularly for those of the people that are attending the interview who are interested in having an impact and making a difference, is what is the key element in having that many people participate as volunteers in a project like this?
Wow. Well, our volunteers are awesome. Absolutely incredible. I think the longest volunteer I've had is wow, she's approaching 20 years. I mean, none of it would be possible without our volunteers. And they're just an incredible group. So many great stories about volunteers. I mean, some of our volunteers are kids that we served when they were kids. And you know, they recovered from their illness, or, you know, went into remission or what have you, and they went off to college. And they were at a school where we were doing an event, and they've helped out, and man, were they just into it. And now they've gone off and, you know, graduated from school and are married and have kids of their own. We've had volunteers who met as volunteers and got married. Volunteers are family members who we've served in the past, families who we served in the past, and their child is cured or in remission or what have you, and they're just like completely into it. And just so you guys know, about 10% of our volunteers are kind of helping behind the scenes. So they maybe have never even attended an event. They're just helping with technical stuff, marketing, what have you, kind of the business side of the organization. And then the other 180 or so are our game day volunteers who are there on game day, boots on the ground, representing the organization. They have the blueprint of the day, and they're really making it all materialize, really. And so, and then they, get to do everything that the families get to do, and they get to go to a game. So, it's not, if you enjoy sports, or even if you don't, I mean, it's not a bad volunteer gig. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a great time. And to get things started, it was mostly like friends and family. And then as we got a new school on board, and we were in a state where we had never done an event, maybe we didn't have a volunteer, then you just reach out to our volunteers and say, all right, who knows somebody, because good people know good people. And so that's pretty easy. And so, that's really how we get our volunteers. But, we're looking to do so much more. I mean, I feel like I say this all the time. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface. And I know that sounds kind of silly after 20 some years, but, we're looking to do so much more, and we need more people. We need more people to kind of join the cause, join the force. And, yeah.
Well, one of the things that there's a couple questions that I'll kind of synthesize. Going back to the self-expression leadership program and the tools that you get in the self-expression leadership program, one of the key components is developing yourself as somebody who can inspire other people by a new possibility. And I think that's clearly illustrated in the what you shared about the volunteers. But if you look back on a day-to-day basis, because it's undeniable the emotional investment that you have in this and humanity, what would you say are some of the ideas or distinctions or tools from that program that you apply on a regular basis?
Be unstoppable. Just being totally unstoppable. Because there's always little fires that pop up. There's always some big change. I mean, it can't help but the busiest Saturday we've ever had in our history was having 8 events going on one day, ranging anywhere from, let's see if I can remember them all. They were Florida, Mississippi State, Baylor, which is in Waco, Texas, UCLA, Wyoming, Northwestern, and I'm leaving out a couple others. So it's coast to coast, and it's going on full day. Families are arriving 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. for a noon kickoff, and then for a kickoff that's on the West Coast at say 10:30 Eastern time or 7:30 Pacific time. And it's long days. It's a lot going on. There are a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of stuff that's out of our control, obviously, like weather and all of that. And so just managing all of that. And there's always going to be an obstacle that pops up, and it's just being unstoppable and saying, I'm going to find a solution. I don't have any other choice than to find a solution and make this happen, and enroll others into helping me make this happen. So I would say, that's a big one, just being unstoppable.
Great. Well, the one other question I wanted to ask you to kind of conclude the interview, and by the way, there's, if anybody does want to ask any other questions, you feel free to still put them in the chat. But, you've been at this now for 20 years. It's a going concern. It is your profession now. I mean, it's what you do. And, I think there's a lot of people out there that have a dream or a vision or a sense that they might want to make a transition to do something that really is a pursuit of the spirit, a passion project. What would you offer to somebody who might be at that moment in making that kind of a leap?
Well, it's also the other thing about the SELP, it's enrolling others, and it's enrolling others in every aspect of your life, your family, your spouse, your kids. Um, um, it's about enrolling those people that you've identified who can really not only help bring your vision to the surface and make it make it happen, materialize, but also to take this beyond where you ever saw it happening. And so there's got to be that enrollment, that buy-in, all of that has to happen. And I probably didn't, in the first few years, I probably didn't understand that as well as I should have. And I was learning as I was going along. I mean, there were so many aspects of the college sports world that I was just completely unaware of. And I had played college sports, and so, but it was at a small Division III school. It wasn't big time to D1 athletics, so that's a whole different thing. But yeah, it's just being unstoppable, enrolling others, and getting that buy-in from others, and that's what can really not only make it easier, but have it kind of create a life of its own, and it just starts taking off.
Well, the thing I hear is a deep trust in the possibility of all of it.
Yeah,
yeah
that's a great way of putting it. Thank you for putting it that way. That's a great way of putting it.
Well, I thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you, Seamus.
This is a clearly something that is a deep passion for you, and it's just a privilege to have you share it with us so openly and authentically.
Yeah.
So really,
yeah, thank you, Seamus, and thanks for the opportunity, and thank you everybody for taking the time also, and your great questions, which